My broke fiancé secretly paid off my parents' mortgage and my student loans years ago, and we only found out because of a typo on a wedding invitation. So, I'm supposed to be marrying the love of my life in 2 months. Let's call him Leo. Leo is the most genuine, down-to-earth person I've ever met. He works as a librarian at our local public library, drives a beat-up 2008 Honda Civic, and his idea of a fancy date is splitting a large cheese pizza and watching a movie on his second-hand laptop. I love him for it. Yesterday, we were finalizing the guest list for our wedding. My mom, a chronic overhelper, was addressing the envelopes. She squinted at the list and said, "Honey, you've got a typo for my sister. You wrote Aunt Carol and Uncle Ben Silverton instead of Aunt Carol and Uncle Ben Millida." I looked at the list. It wasn't a typo. Leo's aunt is Carol. Her husband is Ben. And their last name is Silverton, as in Silverton Industries, as in the multi-billion-dollar shipping and logistics empire that basically keeps the entire state's economy afloat. I turned to Leo, who had gone pale. He gave me a weak, apologetic smile. "I can explain," he squeaked. "That's when the last 5 years of my life with this man suddenly looked completely different. I need to back up. I met Leo 5 years ago. I was a waitress, drowning in debt, working double shift to pay for a degree I wasn't sure I'd ever finish. He came in one night, sat in my section, and ordered just a cup of coffee. He had this kind smile and sad eyes. He was a regular for weeks, always with a book, always polite, always alone. He tipped exactly the cost of his coffee, never more, never less. I just thought he was a quiet, struggling grad student. We started talking about books. Then we started having coffee together after my shifts. We'd walk through the park because it was free. He'd pack us sandwiches so we wouldn't have to buy food. We fell in love in library stacks and thrift stores. It was perfect. It was real. We moved into a tiny cockroach-infested apartment together. We celebrated when we could afford a window AC unit. We saved for months to buy a refurbished couch. He was always my rock, my calm in the storm. Then, about 3 years ago, things started to get weird in a good way. My mom called, sobbing. A letter had arrived. An anonymous donor had paid off the remaining $80,000 on my parents' mortgage. There was no note, just a paid-in-full statement from a bank. We were all stunned and grateful, chalking it up to a mysterious act of kindness. A year later, I logged into my student loan account to make my monthly payment, the one that was going to take another 15 years to finish. The balance was zero, paid in full. Again, anonymously. I cried for hours. I told Leo, and he just held me and said, "See? The universe knows you deserved a break." I thought it was my guardian angel. I was so blind. The signs were all there. His clothes were always good quality, just subtly out of season. He'd casually mention things like, "My grandfather had a yacht. It was more trouble than it was worth." He'd get these random, expensive-looking cheeses as gifts from a friend. He never let me pay for anything, even when I insisted, but always framed it as him wanting to treat me. I just thought he was a man who was good with the little money he had. His family was the elephant in the room. He said they were distant, and he didn't like to talk about them. I never pushed. I figured they were probably poor and estranged, and it was a sore subject. Turns out, he's estranged because he walked away from the family business to become a librarian, much to the horror of his billionaire parents. So back to last night. After the initial shock, the stammering, and him looking like he wanted to crawl under the rug, the truth came out. "Sarah," he said, "taking my hands." His hands were shaking. "My name is Leopold Silverton IV. My family is well off. But I hated that world. It was all about money and status and being fake. The only real thing I ever did was walk away from it. I met you when I was nothing, just a guy with a book and a trust fund I had sworn not to touch." He confessed. After about a year of being with me, watching me struggle and work myself to the bone with so much grace, he couldn't stand it. He had quietly used a portion of his personal trust, the one his grandparents set up that his parents couldn't touch, to help. First my parents, then me. "I was terrified you'd find out," he whispered. "I thought you'd think our whole relationship was some kind of game, or that you'd feel like you owed me something. I didn't want you to love me because of what I could give you. I wanted you to love me for the guy who brings you soup when you're sick and argues with you about the best David Attenborough documentary. I was stunned, angry, confused. I told him I needed to think and went for a long walk. Did I even know him? Was it all a lie? When I came back an hour later, he was sitting on the floor of our tiny apartment, surrounded by financial documents. He wasn't hiding it anymore. He showed me everything. The trust, the payments, his plan for our future. And in that moment, looking at this man who had given me everything, not his money, but his heart, his time, his unwavering support, I realized the money changed nothing. He was the same man who held my hair back when I had the flu. He was the same man who made me laugh until I snorted. He was the same man I wanted to wake up next to for the rest of my life. I walked over, sat down on the floor next to him, and leaned my head on his shoulder. "So," I said, my voice shaky, "does this mean we can afford a better couch?" He let out a sob of relief that was half laughter. He hugged me so tight I thought my ribs would crack. "We can afford 1,000 couches," he whispered into my hair. "But I'm kind of attached to this one. We're married now. We still live in the same apartment. We did buy a new couch, but we put the old one on the curb with a free sign and someone took it within an hour, which made us both inexplicably happy. He still works at the library because he loves it. We use some of his fun money to set up an anonymous foundation that pays off medical and student debt for people in our community. We signed the letters, a grateful librarian. It feels like the perfect way to pay forward the kindness that brought us together.